In 2002, the Ice Hockey Super League was the top level of ice hockey being played in the UK. However, by the year's end, the league would effectively cease to exist after two clubs, the Manchester Storm and the Scottish Eagles, both folded during the early part of the season. Now, the Ice Hockey Super League had a problem: how to carry on. In the end, it chose not to and was reborn as the Elite League. Part of this Elite League involved some new teams joining, including the Manchester Phoenix and the subject of today's video, the London Racers. Formed in 2003, the London Racers were the follow-on team to the Super League's London Knights. Originally announced at the Super League playoffs in 2003, the Racers had a rocky start to life, with many Knights fans being in attendance at those playoffs, still expecting their team to be playing the next season, despite the fact that their owners had not only expressed no interest in continuing with the team, but had also sold their venue. However, despite this start, the London Racers were accepted into the newly formed Elite League as the Capitals franchise, along with the other newly formed team, the Manchester Phoenix. Now, the London Racers, rather than playing out of an impressive arena venue as the Knights had when they played at the Docklands Arena, found themselves starting their first season in the somewhat less than palatial surroundings of Alexandra Palace. Now, that's not to say Alexandra Palace isn't a stunning venue, it is, but for a team entering a league and following on from a team that played in a 10,000 seat arena, stepping down into Alexandra Palace with its approximately 1,500 capacity and no plexiglass at the time was not exactly an amazingly good move on their part. However, the team was formed under the auspices of one Roger Black. The team began recruiting, but it was painfully obvious as the summer wore on that the money just wasn't there to run a team to the standard required. We were looking at a squad of players who, at best, would have struggled in the lower tier BNL, yet here they were, going into the Elite League against such established teams as the Nottingham Panthers, the Sheffield Steelers, the Belfast Giants. This didn't look like it was going to be good, and so it proved to be. The London Racers got off to a losing start to the season, which people expected, and then that losing streak carried on, and on, and on, and on. In fact, it took 40 games before the Racers managed to score a victory. However, despite this, the team managed just one more win over the course of the season and finished with a 3-49-2-2 record, which to this day stands as the worst single season record in Elite League history. Now, the Racers tried, but it was really obvious that playing out of Alexandra Palace just wasn't going to work. So, what was the alternative? Well, for the 2004-2005 season, the Racers moved to Lee Valley in Leighton, East London. Now, again, this was not a big venue. It only held 1,200 people at the time. However, the team tried to be much stronger. They brought in Dennis Maxwell as head coach, and legendary British all-star player Steve Murrier was brought in. And Eric Cairns and Scott Nicol from the NHL came over as part of the 2004-2005 lockout. Now, this was a much better season from the Racers. This year they managed to get into the playoffs by finishing 6th in the league with a 1999-3 record, but they were eliminated by the Cardiff Devils, the team they'd recorded the franchise's first ever victory over. Now, once again, not brilliant, but they'd shown signs of improvement, and things were looking relatively positive moving into the 2005-2006 season for the Racers. On the 5th of November 2005, Blas Emmersic, who was playing for the visiting Nottingham Panthers, suffered a serious facial injury after colliding with a mysterious protruding object from the rink boards at Lee Valley. A few days later, on the 13th of November, a piece of the plexiglass at the same venue was smashed during a game. When the same section was smashed during a training session on the following Tuesday, questions were raised regarding the safety of the players and the spectators at the venue. Unfortunately, the club were unable to reach an agreement with Lee Valley about the safety of the venue and unable to find another location where they could play at such short notice. The team officially withdrew from the Elite League on the 21st of November and then folded. 2.5 seasons. That's not a long time for any franchise to exist, let alone one based in the most populous city in the United Kingdom. So what went wrong for the London Racers? Well, to my mind, it's quite simple. They were trying to run a new team without a suitable venue in, yes, the most populous city in the United Kingdom, but also the city with the most options for people to spend their free time. Within London, you have countless football teams at pretty much every level of the football pyramid. You had a couple of rugby teams. You have countless theatres, cinemas, nightclubs, bars, cafes, restaurants, museums. London is the epicentre of pretty much all of that for the UK, and this hurt the Racers. Playing in small venues that didn't look glamorous hurt. The London Knights, despite never making any money, played to reasonably large crowds in the Docklands Arena because that's how they could promote it. It was an arena, it was big time, it looked impressive, there were videos and light shows and all the razzmatazz you expect with ice hockey. The London Racers couldn't really offer that. As I said, Alexandra Palace, not exactly palatial. Yes, it's a beautiful piece of architecture, but the rink, it's basic. It's a simple sheet of ice, there's some seating on one side, and that's your lot. There's no fancy scoreboards or video screens. It is what it is. And it's a pig to get to. Like most places in London, unless you live within 10 minutes walking distance, you might as well forget getting there and back in a reasonable amount of time. Then, moving out to Lee Valley, the problem was just exacerbated because they'd moved further out of the city into a similar sized yet much rougher looking venue. Lee Valley Ice Centre at the time was not a pleasant rink. Sorry, Lee Valley fans. Truth hurts, but it wasn't. And certainly for a team looking to ply its wares in the top league in the country at the time, going up against Nottingham Panthers, who were playing at the National Ice Centre in Nottingham, the Sheffield Steelers, who were playing out of Sheffield Arena, Belfast Giants at the Odyssey, it just wasn't good enough, unfortunately. And the problems with the plexiglass and the boards just showed that the rink wasn't up to maintaining professional level ice hockey. They couldn't do it. And let's not forget, being the capital of the UK, London is the most expensive city in the UK. So every expense that the London Racers had compared to other clubs was higher. Housing, transport, all of these things were more expensive. The fact is, Sheffield, Nottingham, Belfast, relatively cheap cities to rent properties for your players in. London, you could probably rent somewhere for the same price per week as teams were paying per month elsewhere in the league, and this hurt them because with small crowds in small venues and a low number of sponsors, your revenue isn't there, and that revenue wasn't there to support what was going on with the club, and ultimately it killed the Racers. Poor on ice performance, poor facilities, poor finances. It was the perfect storm to kill the club. They were missed by some, not many, but some, and they are an important part of the history of the Elite League. They were one of the founding clubs, even if the way they were announced was not exactly the best. And, you know, they are still a league record holding club, albeit a record that no club ever wants to hold, and I'm pretty sure none of the current clubs would ever want to take away from them. But that, folks, was the London Racers. I've been Rob Hitchin. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.